Good afternoon here from Palm Springs International Film Festival. Valerie Milano, the senior editor of the Hollywood Times and also with Aspiring Magazine. And I'm so glad to have our guests here today. I'm going to have them introduce themselves. Thank you two so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Hi, I'm Alex Ruthizer. I am the producer of our documentary film Raoul Wallenberg, Missing in Action.
And I am Brian Mait. I am the producer director of the documentary Raoul Wallenberg Missing in Action.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I know Brian's already left Palm Springs, and so has Alex, unfortunately. So we're here on Zoom today, and I appreciate it again that for you to be in here. Raoul Wallenberg is often celebrated as a hero, but your film deliberately moves beyond hero worship. What felt most important about examining not just what Wallenberg did, but how and why the world failed him afterward?
I think first and foremost, Raoul Wallenberg was a hero. And I think it's important to paint that picture clearly. And I hope our film definitely, puts the punctuation mark and the exclamation mark, I should say, after that statement. But he also was a human being, and there's, many, many different elements surrounding this narrative. And I think both Alex and I thought it was really just essential to explore those elements. Um, the word that kind of comes to mind for me is closure. There have been books and movies and television shows that have been produced around Raoul throughout the decades since his disappearance, but questions have persisted. They certainly have, at least for both Alex and myself, and certainly for his family, which we are integrated and woven in throughout the entire course of the film. His immediate family, that is. And so we wanted to ask these difficult questions to provide a sense of closure, both for Raoul and for his family, because both he and I think generations of his family who have sought out these answers really just deserve nothing less than the truth.
Alex, do you have anything to add to that?
Um, yeah, I would just circle back to the word authenticity that I was thinking about when you were answering the question. As you said, we wanted to move beyond the hero worship, and we wanted to obviously, as Brian said, highlight that he is a hero and the massive, massive impact that he's had on history and humanity and the hundreds of thousands of people that ultimately lived over the past 80 years because of him. But at the same time, you know, we wanted to also focus on the truth and, to be authentic in our storytelling.
Okay,
I
thank
would
you.
just, I would just add that neither of those are mutually exclusive. Like neither of
Yeah.
those should live in a vacuum. And I think what we really aim to do is to bring both of those together. We like to say when we're talking about this film that if you only know of Raoul Wallenberg for rescuing upward of 100,000 innocent lives in the final moments of World War II in Nazi-occupied Europe, or his disappearance into the Soviet prison system, that you only know half the story. And even then, you only know half the truth. And what has been paramount for us on this adventure, that Alice and I have been on for, over almost 13 years at this point, is to bring that to the forefront, to bring the truth to the forefront. Because the myth matters, the legacy matters, but the truth is paramount.
Thank you. Yeah, the title, Missing in Action, is striking and deeply provocative. When did the idea of reframing Wallenberg's disappearance around global inaction rather than mystery alone, when did it become central to the film?
We so it's twofold actually. So we conducted many interviews over the course of the year. I think Alex, I think we're in the 80s. I think 83 interviews. I think we
Wow.
recorded.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was quite an extensive production.
I think ultimately our incredibly talented editor, Tina Grapenthin, we narrowed it down to I think about 20 interviews, 23 interviews that you see ultimately that tell this story so successfully. And several of these interviews were fantastic and just didn't make it just because of circumstance, and other ones, we had to vet and understand whether or not we deemed their testimonies as valid, whether or not we could corroborate what they were saying and how they were saying it. But for me, we were conducting an interview with somebody who was actually not in the film, and he asked a rhetorical question to me, and I could never unhear this narrative again. And I think Alex, and the rest of the team really just, I think, echoes my sentiments right now. We just sort of went from seeing this as a biographical piece into much more of a journalistic enterprise. It just like shifted the thoughts in terms of what this film could be and what this film in fact should be. This kind of, segues back to our first question here. We were just discussing this idea that like, and someone says it in the film, myth making works in mysterious ways. The myth is important, but again, the truth is paramount. And we keep coming back to that sort of sentiment. And that happened, I would say, about a year and a half, 2 years into this production. We were again starting to really get into the flow of talking to people, with interviewing subjects, with understanding where this lead might take us, and this interview might introduce us to another person we hadn't yet heard of through our own research. But yeah, there was this moment, and it sent chills down my spine and gave me goosebumps, and I could never unsee the story in that particular way. And we then went out to set out to prove that thesis.
Yeah. On a different note, you feature narration by Jake Gyllenhaal, Brian Cox, and Jamie Lee Curtis. How did you approach using such powerful voices in a way that added gravity without overwhelming Wallenberg's own story?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's many facets to this. Like, we wanted to make a film, not even just a documentary film. We wanted to make and tell a story that was worthy, that mirrored the scale of Raoul Wallenberg's Herculean efforts, his own efforts. And that became this injection of not just factual uh, uh, storytelling, factual testimonies, like we were saying before, but really the injection of incredible production value as well. There are like 40 or so photographs that exist of Raoul Wallenberg. All of them are basically included within the film. They're all shot practically. They're all photographed practically. We're not using digital effects to animate those. There's no audio recording that exists of Raoul Wallenberg. No one, unfortunately, has captured his recorded voice. And so we knew that it was really important that we bring in highly celebrated talent to provide voice to the voiceless. You mentioned Jamie Lee Curtis, Brian Cox, and Jake Gyllenhaal. Each of them play one of the central characters in this story. Jake Gyllenhaal is portraying Raoul Wallenberg. Jamie Lee Curtis is portraying Raoul's mother, Mai, and Brian Cox is portraying Raoul's grandfather, who was instrumental in rearing and raising Raoul Wallenberg, Gustav Wallenberg. Beyond being celebrated names, it was also crucially important to us that there was some kind of personal connection to the subject matter as well. We didn't, quote, air quotes here, simply want celebrated talent. We wanted talent that really had a personal connection to the subject and to the material that we were working with here. It was a very, very short list. I had gone to a screening of Everything Everywhere All at Once. I had heard Jamie on stage speaking about not having an understanding as to what that script was about when it was pitched to her, but being pitched by the Daniels, the director of that film, that incredible masterpiece of a film, and how struck she was by their passion for this project. After the Q&A ended, I went up to Jamie, I congratulated her on her film, and went home and drafted an email of my own. Sometimes these screenings are not the exact right place to approach people.
Yeah.
I drafted this passionate email about how she is the exact right person. Tony Curtis, Hungarian Jew. His parents, again, also Hungarian Jews. Tony Curtis was instrumental in the restoration of the magnificent synagogue in Budapest. There was like this through line there. She was the only person at this point, the right person to play this role. And then Alex, through his incredible producing skills, um, basically manifested that this would be put in the right hands. Alex, if you want to speak to how you got that to Jamie directly.
Yeah. So I think one thing that can't be understated is how important and impactful it was to have really great people from the industry who are, who are veterans in the industry really helping us. So our two executive producers, Jeff Sagansky and Happy Walters, were just absolutely incredible in that respect. And what we've always said is you really just need one yes. And so, once we had this strategy around who was going to who we wanted to voice these characters, that's when um, you know these executive producers, just specifically when it came to Jamie, really stepped up for us and was able to help us close that.
Um, I would only bookend that with, in researching Jamie, we came to understand and discover that her real life godson is both of Swedish and Jewish descent. They share this incredibly close familial bond, and that's Jake Gyllenhaal, who also happens to be a movie star. Um, After recording voiceover with Jamie, she made it abundantly clear that she wanted to take an active role in the project beyond just granting us her voice, which is outstanding, by the way. And so we then asked if she could make this connection happen. At that point, it was kind of clear to both Alex and I, and honestly the entire team, that Jake could be really, really just the only person that could play this role at this point. Like for me, I loved the idea, the subtext of real life godmother and godson being portrayed through this narrative as a mother who just never gave up in her pursuit for finding answers as to what became of her disappeared son. And so, like, knowing these things, I find the performances that much more powerful. And then to round out the cast, I was at a party and was introduced to Nicole Ansari, who is Brian Cox's wife. And she was telling me about how Brian is this immense Russophile. He actually spent time in Russia teaching theater and has just utter disdain for the present administration that governs that country. And so it just felt like striking to me to have such a boisterous, heavy voice to voice this incredibly powerful, prominent role in Raoul's life by somebody who has that, again, this immediate connection to the subject material and subject matter. And so it just kind of all coalesced together to create just this perfect piece of alchemy, I would say, it's just like spontaneous magic. Like all the performances are exceptionally powerful and yet understated, I would say. They don't overpower the film, yet they're emotional, they're raw, they're real, and they're significant. And we're just humbled and grateful to all three of these performers for joining this team and for being a part of this project.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot, and I appreciate you going into detail about the narration. I'm so glad I asked the question. The score, performed by Orchestra Ukrainia and recorded in Kiev during an active war, gives the film an urgent contemporary resonance. Can you talk about that decision and how today's geopolitical realities shaped the emotional language of the documentary?
I mean, I think resonance is the exact right word. It's literally the exact word that I used to communicate with our incredibly talented composer, Mihaly Paleologou, um, is resonance. I wanted you to be able to feel the power of the music. And this music was written over the course of of 2 years. Mihaly is not only incredibly gifted, but he is also incredibly patient. Just a ton of back and forth to get to a place where the score was fully complete. Um, you know, he and I worked tirelessly to make something that was really powerful, that was, um, you know, psychologically guiding you toward different places and really developing a roller coaster ride for you as the viewer, along the way. I think we just previously spoke about this idea. We wanted something big and powerful that was, reflective of just Raoul's own work. We wanted people to feel that, and we wanted people to feel the emotion of heroics. We wanted people to feel the emotion of loss, of disappointment, of hopefulness. Uh, and I think Mahali just knocked it out of the park. I was always under the understanding, I think Mahali was as well, that this would be something, ultimately scored, ultimately put to music and performed by a string quartet and perhaps a piano. Um, Certainly not something of this scale. And I would defer to Alex in terms of just, obtaining, Orchestra Ukrainia, which was something that, blew us all away, certainly.
Yeah, I think similarly to when, we were thinking about the voices for our film, that Raoul Wallenberg is a huge name. He's made a huge impact on the world, on humanity, and we should be aiming very high for the experience, for the quality of experience of learning about Raoul Wallenberg. So, we started to think about orchestras, and, obviously directors want everything, producers want want to control costs and resources and everything. So, little by little, it's the number of musicians starts to go up, and then you're just like, hey, well, you know what? Why don't we just get an orchestra? And at the same time, just through the fundraising and networking around the film, the the war in Ukraine was, at its very height. So I was just getting to meet a lot of people who had connections to Kyiv, or, were going around the world themselves, kind of trying to, spread the word about what was going on there. And, a few phone calls, and, we were connected with one of the preeminent conductors in the country. And then the rest was history.
Yeah, I would add to Alex's point, much like the voices as well, like there is a direct connection here, like Ukraine is still actually suffering, dearly, from Russia's actions, present actions in terms of invasion. And so to us, it felt like this was sort of like a piece of a piece of protest as well, to incorporate something along these lines that, uh, yeah,
Yeah.
that provides a piece of protest towards the actions being taken against them, the aggression
You,
taken against.
and you could feel that in the room,
Yeah, very very
with the
much so.
musicians.
Sorry, please go ahead, Alex. Please.
No, I mean that Brian, you can go deeper into that, but just, yeah, I mean, there was definitely an added layer of emotion and really just effort on part of these, Ukrainian musicians who were, um, you know, I can say these musicians were not the ones who were fortunate enough to wind up in these world touring fundraising shows. They were, in the war zone, living through air raids, and part of the recording was interrupted at some point because of this, and so you can just tell there was an added height of emotion and purpose around this specific topic, because obviously you know the musicians themselves were kind of in a very real way living through what Raoul lived through, this onslaught.
Yeah, so Alex and myself and Mahali were zooming into the live session recordings to provide feedback and just to bear witness to the extraordinary performances throughout. I think it was just three days of performances that
Yeah,
were
it was three
required.
full days.
Three full days. Um, we all very, very much wanted to be there in person. Just again, to Alex's point, with the amount of violence that was taking place at the exact same time, it was you drone attack and bombs. It just wasn't safe for us to do so. But to Alex's point, you could just feel the emotion in the room. These are emotional pieces, and as they were being performed, you could really just get a sense of the raw nature of what was being captured. And just it was kind of like just one of those lightning in a bottle type of moments. I think everyone knew something special was happening while it was happening. It was just you just knew something special was being captured, and I think it really just manifests and shows itself when you watch the film as well.
So interesting. Talking about the narration, talking about the orchestra. I love this conversation. I'm just learning so much. So you screened at the Palm Spring International Film Festival. The films feels especially timely. What did you hope that the modern audiences, particularly policymakers and global citizens, would take away from Wallenberg's story in the context of today's crisis? And in the room here, in the screening rooms, how did you feel about the audience?
I think the audience reception was fantastic. What's interesting, having watched this film hundreds of times, I can't tell you how many times I've seen it now at this point. What I find most refreshing actually at this point is to watch audiences watching the film. So like I'm in these both we screened twice at the Palm Springs International Film Festival. And if we haven't said it yet to date, we're so grateful to the Palm Springs International Film Society for inviting us and for allowing us to premiere our film there. Um, what I really just enjoyed was watching those audience reactions. And like we were saying before, seeing how certain beats that were designed played out in the room. Watching certain reveals happen in real time and seeing an audience's reaction, a gasp, a laugh, the air being sucked out of a room. Um, as our findings are being revealed. These are moments that are just exceptionally gratifying to Alex and I as filmmakers who have
Yeah.
been so closely connected to this for such a long time. And to me, it was just like again like a kind of a humbling experience to play it um, here at home in the States and to be a part of that experience.
Yeah, I would just add that it's both reaffirming and illuminating to kind of to I people watch, you could say, during the screening because there's certain moments that were, I mean, the reaffirmation part is there's certain moments that, were built in the edit room because we wanted to have a strong reaction from the audience. And there were certain parts where you're like, okay, wow, I didn't see that one coming, but okay, great. They're responding to that, as well.
Thank you. So I'm sure this film is going to be on a lot more festival circuits. What else are you gentlemen working on next?
We're in the midst of trying to figure that part out, actually.
Okay.
We have a couple different things that are being toyed around at the moment, and we're excited to kind of sink our teeth into it. This has been just like the most incredible adventure, certainly one of the most rewarding of my professional career, because it's something that we've dug our teeth in so deeply over the course of 13 years. It's just so personal, and to see this live, I very much hope that our next projects have the same sort of lasting impression on both of us as well.
Same to you,
Though,
Alex.
though, though, though we would like it to go faster next time.
Here, here. I can agree with that.
Okay. Well, it's been my pleasure to meet you virtually, and hopefully you will keep the Hollywood Times dot today, hollywoodtimes.net, aspiringmagazine.com in the loop on what you're doing next, please.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And this film, yes, we're spreading the word, and I can't thank you enough for your time there in both your respective places. And again, thank you for this film and for your creativity.
Yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak
Yeah.
about it.
All right,
Thanks, Valerie.
Brian. All right, bye bye for now.
Bye.